Yeah, it should be interesting. Like I said, it's the first time that we've had a phone person. Or not.
No, when Travis was on the first time,
I thought he was using Hangouts from his phone, though.
that might have been it. Yeah.
Which is funny because
And
Kyle knows Travis. So it's
Who's that?
Travis Bartosik from Abiotic.
Oh, right.
Yeah. So, like, I'm pretty sure I met the two of you on the same tour. So
Yeah, probably.
small
Yeah,
world.
a few years ago.
Actually, oddly enough, so things that have changed. Corey now lives in Michigan again. He was in California
really?
on the first episode. Yeah, Kyle's in Michigan now. And Travis is actually on tour in Michigan tonight.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, what are the odds?
Huh. That's funny.
Yeah. Well, if you're listening to this, that's the soft, sultry baritone voice of my friend Kyle Skogquist.
Hello.
As I mentioned in the intro, Kyle was on. I finally found it. Episode 15, almost 3 full years ago.
Wow, is it that long?
Yeah. And some backstory. The whole reason that this thing came about is because I got really drunk in the Northwoods of Wisconsin. Shocker to anyone listening. I got drunk. And I saw someone with a giant impaler patch on their back. And I just texted you, and here we are.
And here we are.
Here we are. It's been quite a while, buddy. I miss you.
It has. Time flies as we get older, huh?
Holy shit. Yeah, it was a year ago that, well, you unfortunately weren't able to make it, but we were supposed to go on a trip to Ohio, which ended up being like the longest 2 days of my life because of nonstop snowstorms. But you win some, you lose some.
Yeah, go see Chimera. That would have been sweet.
Yeah. Well, now that they've played that one show, there's a very good chance that they're going to be back together sooner or later.
Well, maybe we'll try to make the next one.
I fucking hope so. I just hope that they don't do it in December. Like I get.
Well, don't they have that
thing,
the annual New Year's show?
They did
in Cleveland every year, like when they were together.
Yeah, they did. That's what the last year was. It was that Chimera Christmas show. But maybe they'll tour.
Yeah,
I don't know. I know that a couple of the guys did that other band, which wasn't very good in my opinion. I can't remember the name.
Never heard that one, but it was good to hear that they got like the main lineup back because played with them about 4 years ago, and Mark was the only original member, and the guys he got were good, but it just didn't have that same magic as the Impossibility of Reason lineup.
Right. It's not quite the same. Rob Arnold started a band called The Elite, and that back in September. I didn't care for the song. It's more like hard rock than anything, but I back to what you were saying. I was like, I do agree. I mean, I saw him. Shit. Yeah, it was the Impossibility of Reason. Right when that album came out, we saw them. They'd play like 3 shows every tour in Wisconsin. And they were all like within an hour and a half of where I lived at the time. So we would just go to all 3.
That's cool.
Yeah. So it was kind of weird to see those guys all the time. And I remember one time we played a show in Cleveland at Peabody's, I believe it was. That's gone now, but this was...
Peabody's is gone?
Yeah, Peabody's has been gone for a while. I love that place too.
Oh, yeah. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so we played, it was like a local showcase, and Jason, he was the original guitar player. I can't think of his last name. God, but the internet knows. But anyways, his band was like headlining the showcase, and I just was outside on the phone calling my girlfriend, and all of Chimera walked in. And this was in 2006, 2005. Jason Hagar, that's who it was.
Okay.
But yeah, and so they all went there, and I mean, it was kind of cool just to see. I mean, at the time that 2006 was looking for an album release here, 2005. So shit. In between self-titled and Resurrection.
Self-titled? Oh, Resurrection, that's right.
In between the two. So yeah, that was a good time. Resurrection was a solid fucking album.
Yeah, Really was.
Yeah.
It really wasn't. I don't know. I didn't really think there was any weak albums from Chimera. Even the earlier stuff was good, but it was just a slightly different style.
It was. I agree. I mean, Possibility of Reason was more new metal.
Yeah.
Like I remember that one song, Dead Inside. I saw them play, or they played it on. Fuck, what was that farm? Fat Farm, Ant Farm. That it was like a TV show where they would have bands play. Back when bands still played on TV. But yeah, it was just so fucking new metal. And then their self-titled came out, and it was. Oh no, I'm sorry. Pass Out of Existence is what I keep calling the Impossibility of Reason. Pass Out of Existence is when I first saw them. And then Impossibility of Reason came out, and that was like super fucking straight heavy.
2002, 2003. Yeah. I think I saw them there with Danzig and Prong.
Oh God, that was. They came a lot with. I want to say I saw them with like 40 Below Summer a bunch. Fear Factory and El Nino. They played with those a lot. But yeah, Pass Out of Existence was more new metal. Possibility of Reason is when they went like just straight metal. Oh, they're so good.
Yeah,
so fucking.
Yeah, good. That one's definitely my favorite. I love all the drummers that they got, but Andals, I think, was definitely their best drummer.
Agreed. They had the what band did they pull a bunch of guys from? At one point, it was like
the Soilwork.
Yes, it was Soilwork.
Ricky.
Yeah.
Ricky from Soilwork.
Yeah, they had. God damn, I'm trying to think of what lineup it was. Where it was like it was almost an entirely different band, and then just Mark Hunter.
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Well, that's coming with a lot of bands these days. Hard to keep the starting lineup.
Yeah, it's weird to think consistent. About. I saw like Kiss is doing another farewell tour.
Yeah, which actually pretty excited about because I think there's a pretty good chance that they're gonna involve all of the surviving members of Kiss, like throughout the the different lineups, like Ace and Bruce Kulick actually got up on stage and played some songs with them during the Kiss cruise recently, and Vinnie Vincent put on his makeup and played the pre-show. So Paul Stanley said he's not ruling out involving past members on this tour.
But do you really think it's their last one?
Well, I don't think it is going to be like the end of Kiss, but I think it's pretty much going to be like what Ozzy is doing. Like it's the last time they're going to go out doing a world tour. I think they're still going to probably play some one-off big shows or whatnot. I mean, I could see them milking whatever they need to get to the 50-year mark, and then they had talked about possibly doing like an American Idol type setup to replace all the current members of Kiss, and that way Kiss can be
a franchise
forever, which is a neat idea, but for any original Kiss fan, I don't think that's really cool to like. I wouldn't go and see the new lineup of Kiss.
No, when would they be 50? Do you know offhand?
Well, they've kind of gone back and forth. Like they've said 73, but I've also heard Gene mention 72. He might be referring to him and Paul and Wicked Lester, but I think the first like time that the four original members got together, I think was probably 73. So they're classifying. They've been together for 45 years right now. So, and they're going to do a 3-year long farewell tour, which means they would have 2 more years left to, try to stretch that 50-year mark.
Which they could just not do anything for 2 years.
I would like to hear them do one more album and involve all past members and current members of the band. I think that would actually be a great way to go out, and I think fans would appreciate it.
Would that be like a live 4 or something?
Well, they did a live 4 with Melbourne Symphony Orchestra.
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, maybe they could do like a live 5 or something.
Which would make sense for their 50th.
Oh, that yeah.
What's that?
That would make sense for their 50th is in a live album every 10 years.
Oh, right. Yeah. I'm sure they'll have something planned. I mean, they always do a great job of hyping everything up. They've been on a lot of daytime and nighttime television shows, making appearances, doing performances, and they know how to market and build the hype. So even if, you know, they don't tour anymore, I don't think they'll completely, you know, just stop the Kiss machine altogether. I think they'll probably, you know, maybe put out a new recording here and there. Who knows? But I'm a longtime Kiss fan, so I would like to see them continue in some form.
Do you really think Gene Simmons would let that die? Unless he physically dies?
Well, I think if they do go forward with finding new members to continue the band, I'm sure Gene will probably have a large stake in the earnings that lineup makes.
Yeah.
So here's my thoughts.
They will never stop.
Kiss is theatrical, but not at a level of, say, Alice Cooper. Like Alice Cooper, you go to see a show of his, it's a stage show. It's almost like a magic show, or at least a sideshow with magic aspects and things. Paul has done musical theater. I think he's done Phantom or something. And we know that there's been a big surge in taking music from bands and making musical theater stuff out of it, like doing Mamma Mia for ABBA. Billy Joel has one. There's a whole bunch of different people who've done that. What if Kiss did something that was like an equivalent of those things sort of put together? Did a Kiss live stage show kind of thing
For Love Gun?
For just in general, but like took their best of songs and stuff and did a play, a musical that they don't have to be in, but at any point in time they could suddenly show up and be the understudy, quote unquote, that day and play on. And then you could have all these other people who have either played with or wanted to play with or just grew up with Kiss be the bands who go and do it. And instead of doing it like at a theater run, do it like a tour. Yeah. But the only question of that is, how do you do that and not do the Elder? Oh wait, we've heard the Elder. That's how.
Well, I don't know. I actually don't think the Elder is really completely a bad album. I think there's some good things on there. But I don't know. Like I think there's fans for every era of that band, and then I think the hardcore fans like just accept all of it. But that's a great idea, though. I think that that would be a very marketable and an unexplored avenue that they could they could try it. But I think that's the really cool thing about Kiss is the fact that they've played the Super Bowl, they've played the Olympics. They've done so many things that no other band has done. They had a pro wrestler. They had all the different merchandising and
video games, pinball games, comic books with their blood in it.
It's a lot of people consider other bands doing stuff like that selling out, but I've always appreciated their approach of stimulate all the senses. Not only put out great rock and roll, but put on a huge bombastic show as well. And you think about it, I mean, Gene and Paul have really done an amazing job keeping the band going for 45 years. And I mean, their popularity has been up and down, but overall they've been a very successful band the whole time. And I don't think too many too many bands that have been around that long can say the same, same thing. So,
that's a good point. I think Metallica is becoming, and I can't even say the modern day Kiss because they've only been, what are they, almost 10? They're 10 years younger as a band than Kiss, so they'll be 40 in 22. But I'm looking at their merch store right now. You can buy watches. They have pinball machines, glassware, coffee mugs, koozies, which I guess isn't that out of the question. They record every show. They have whiskey. They have beer. James Hetfield started doing honey because he's a beekeeper now. So you can buy. Yeah, so it's which.
Thank goodness somebody is.
Yeah, fuck right. They're doing like a charity event where you could bid on 2 pounds, and it was at $850. So I was like, fuck that.
2 pounds of honey?
Yeah, 2 pounds of
James
Hetfield honey.
That's like, turn that into some sort of alcoholic beverage, and now you've got my business.
Yeah, formulate some meat out of that or something.
Well, exactly. But god damn, that shit would cost so much when you really boil it down. But I mean, they're a high dollar production stage show. They had a synchronized drone part during a song. They have these cubes that go up and down. They're video cubes and shit. So it's, I think more bands are doing stage productions like that. Like I don't go to those shows really. Normally the shows that I go to, it's 9 million degrees and there's 200 people jammed into a tiny room and it sounds like shit.
Right.
So yeah, I don't know what other bands are doing, but just the fact, like, you can get Metallica shoes and they have everything. They made that movie and they have, DVDs, they have live recordings of every show and, personalized or specific show shirts and posters and shit. And it's like,
but I think that's any big band that gets to a point where they know that they've made all the money that they're going to make from their albums. They kind of hit a stagnation on that, and it becomes how much merchandise can we sell and what new merchandise can we introduce that people want.
Right.
Like Greg Barrett, as a comedian, he did this bit where he was talking about, I'm at an age now where I don't need another rock and roll t-shirt, but a rock and roll day planner would be fucking awesome. Where's my Weezer tea cozy? Where's there? And it's funny, but it's the truth is that I am at a point where I don't want to like get jacket anymore. I haven't been at that point for 30 years, but a tasteful striper for old man Corey kind of thing, I would rock that. I would rock that proudly because I was a big Striper fan when I was a teenager. And I follow Michael Sweet on Instagram, and I'm like, man, I'm an old man rocker too, just not the degree of like making that kind of music and stuff. But I feel like you have to take that to that level. And Kiss hasn't sold out because Kiss was always that act, and I think that they did something really magical by making the characters bigger than the people. And I think where they lost track with people was when they stopped being the characters and started being themselves. And getting that back means that they can franchise it, they can bring it to that next level. But it adds the mystery back to it. If you do say we're going to have a next generation of Kiss, it's not like finding a new member for TLC. It's like you don't know who's going to be underneath the makeup, but you're going to get what we have marked as the Kiss experience from them. And that makes it, I think, kind of cool again.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I think, I don't know, I think we're all around the same age, but I think
Corey's 85.
There's a big difference. What's that?
Corey is 85 years old.
Oh, right. Well, I think we're all products from the 80s, and I think we have kind of like a set standard of what we expect out of rock and metal bands, and we have an appreciation for those genres that is different than I think the current the younger generation, because we were used to camping out or waiting in line for concert tickets or buying magazines to read up on our favorite bands, and buy albums and cassettes and
Well,
vinyl and all that. And
that's
I think
like
I think that. Oh, sorry.
No. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. But like, I vividly remember going to a record store and like I pre-ordered. Now this is gonna age me a little bit, but I pre-ordered Saint Anger. I think that was the first Metallica album that I got the day it came out. Maybe it was Reload. I think it was Reload. But it's like I remember going in there and pre-ordering that album, and the day that it came out, I went and I got it and I listened to it. And now it's, bands put out. You have a 10-album CD that's coming out 3 months from now. Well, you're going to get 4 songs that come up before that thing even comes out. And then at midnight, it's just there. It's on the internet. If you pre-ordered it, it's immediately downloaded to your phone, or it's immediately on Spotify. And it's just, there's something special. Like, I still buy vinyl for certain bands. There's something special about having that record sit there, and going back to Metallica, I bought every Metallica album on vinyl, even though I have it in digital format. I have it on CD. But I wanted the vinyl, and I can set it on my wall while I'm listening to it. And it's just, I don't know, there's something special about it, just having the physical item.
I think it's because it's a type of ritual. It's an event. You get up off of wherever you're sitting and, pick up the vinyl or the CD, take it out, and you're looking at the artwork, and you put it in your record player, your CD player, your tape deck, and you sit and listen, and you purchase it, so you have a personal investment. And even if you didn't like the album, you're gonna give it a few listens to try to like it because you spent money on it. And I think that experience is lost with new generation and with technology, because like it's just a bunch of white noise that it's free. And people aren't putting the time and effort and the passion into it like they used to. And that's why, I love KISS so much, is because they give you, every aspect of the experience that you can possibly get. Yeah. And they make it memorable. They make it an event. It's not just a concert of, some people that look like they just walked up from the audience. They work very hard to put on a presentation that you're going to remember for years.
So, and with that being said, do you think that they could get away with replacing the members of KISS because you're making it an event and it's more something you go to versus see this band? Like, I'm going to go see these characters. Like, if they go back to the character format instead of, Gene Simmons as the Demon, or you're going to go see the Demon. Like, do you think that that's something that they could theoretically do successfully and well enough to keep KISS alive?
I think they could, for the simple fact that there really isn't any bands like KISS around. And I mean, there's nothing against the modern bands out there, but all these bands that are retiring or dying off, Black Sabbath and Motorhead, and who knows how much longer Judas Priest and Iron Maiden are going to keep going.
Right.
All these bands that we grew up to, there's nobody really to take their place, because of technology, because people make the argument that you can release everything yourself. You don't have to go through a record label. But I don't think you get the distribution and the advertising that you once could before, because now the internet, it's just, there's too much on there. I mean, people aren't really gonna go out of their way to become a loyal fan like they used to, in my opinion.
Right. And I agree with what you're saying. And I think it's true that you can still get your music out there without a record label, but there's a huge caveat to it. I can put our music is on Spotify. We don't have a record label. All I did was check a box for that. But still, you have to go out and prove that you can do it. Having a record label kind of pre-proves it, saying they were good enough that these people gave them money or whatever. They entered a deal with them. The problem is that there are so many record labels that just fuck bands that having a record label seems like it's a bad word now.
Well, writing, it's the same thing. Is you're a writer And so people, for a long time, it was who's your publisher, get an agent, all these things. And that went out the window with Amazon and the ability to write on your own. But for a long time, people didn't take the product as seriously if you didn't have a publisher, or they think it should be $1 or as cheap as possible or free. Because, well, you're getting all the money now. And it's like, well, no, Amazon's kind of considered the publisher. And if you price it under a certain price point, you lose 70% of what you would make versus 30%. But it took a long time for the writers to establish themselves. And then you have the old school writers who don't want to go that route, who trust having a publisher, who see the benefits of that. Neither one is wrong. But in this generation, we're in a generation where people just want to consume everything as much as possible. I don't think for the average person, they see a difference. But you can hear a difference. You can see a quality difference when you're talking about someone who's gone into a studio and worked with a producer, because a producer puts a different flavor into the mix when it comes to, a good producer does, versus somebody who's working on their own in Pro Tools at home. If you work with a producer, if you work with a Bob Rock or something, or if you work with a songwriter, going back with Kiss stuff like Desmond Child, it makes a difference into the final product of what people hear. Yeah. And that, I think, is what sets it apart.
Yeah. And I think there's a lot of variables, that being one huge one that, I think people are content recording and releasing what they put together in their home studios and putting it up on YouTube, or just recording themselves play and putting it up on YouTube. The work ethic as far as getting out there isn't the same. I think Dave Grohl said something along the lines of American Idol and The Voice and shows like that. That's not how a band or a musician is made or should be made. It's starting out in a garage or a basement and sucking and having your friends tell you suck, and you keep playing and you keep writing and recording until you get better, and you get out there and play shows and you tour and blood, sweat, and tears, and just get out of your house and play in front of people. And it seems like people are just so content doing the YouTube thing.
Yeah, well, I mean, in the American Idol sense, you see somebody who's an actual musician show up on American Idol every once in a while. Casey Abrams, I think, was a guy who was on there that played so many different instruments, had a real sound, would like to sing a cappella stuff, had an old soul when it came to music. And he was in the top 10. He got to go on with the show for a ways, but he also got out of it pretty fast because that's not what that audience is looking for. I think it might have been the same season as Scotty McCreery winning, and Scotty McCreery was a little boy from the very beginning that's like, Idol wanted to make him American Idol. And so you can see the pushes. They know what their market really is, and you'll get little hints of that. But that's not what those shows are meant to produce. And if there's a making the band with actual a band, it's hard to get 4 people or 5 people into a room and make them work together. That's a struggle that takes years of finesse to say, wow, this keyboardist is a dick, let's get rid of him.
Yeah, and I know Kyle can vouch for this. He's been in the same situation as I have, but there's just something special about people who are your closest friends and you're creating something with them. And from the time that, and I play drums, so Kyle can probably see it from a different angle, but from the time that your guitar player comes in and is like, hey, I got this riff. And then it's like, hey, keep playing this. I got this idea. And then the bassist opens his mouth and ruins the entire song. But it's like, sorry, Ken is one of my best friends, but there's just something super special about it. And then once you finally lock it down and, your vocalist puts his touches on it, and then you go and play it in front of a room of people or 4 people, but just to see that people enjoy it and, that what I created, someone likes, and then to have it on CD. And it's like, now I'm to a point where I do it for me. Like, I don't care if anyone comes to our shows. I love that people come, but we're just doing it for us. Like, we're writing music that we want to write, because it's something that we want to do, and then we're recording it, so we have it. It's just, you can also buy it from me, and you can also listen to it online, or you can buy it online. And I think a lot of times these people get so fixated on just I'm going to be famous. I'm going to be in a band, I'm going to be famous, that they kind of forget about what it is. It's a creative process. It's like being an artist.
Although I saw a lot of that in the 80s too. I saw a lot of local bands that, because they had the right look and they had the ability to get the right equipment and they had the right length of hair, just assume that they were going to be the next break-in thing. And I think any industry has that. Someone looks at it and goes, I can do what that fucker's doing.
That'll never stop.
Right. Yeah. But YouTube is an equalizer in the fact that anybody could be famous. You don't have to be in the right place, right time, but there is a differentiator in what the audience finds and what they'll continue following. And some of that is more personality than it is talent.
Yeah. There was...
I agree, because on social media or YouTube, anybody can be self-proclaimed whatever. And I kind of related to Guitar Hero, like, worked at a pawn shop for years, and I would have kids that would come in asking for it when it was popular. Every time I would try to talk them into buying a real guitar. I was like, hey, you got to memorize buttons. You might as well memorize frets and strings. Yeah. And, they would turn it down almost every time. And it just, to me, like, that just, like, glorifies somebody who isn't a musician. And, they basically, like, flood the internet with, whatever their take on writing music is or whatever. And I think it saturates the market for people that are actually trying really hard to get somewhere with music.
Yeah. And
I think, what radio stations kind of forced on everybody's ears and just the mainstream, I think really makes it hard for the underdog, i.e. rock and roll and heavy metal nowadays.
Yeah, but do you remember, it must have been 90, 91 or something, when Danger came out, and I'm calling out Danger. I don't remember if this was them or if it was another band that was just like them. It was a band put together by someone like Desmond Child, where it was exactly the perfect look, the perfect choreography, we all shake our heads and asses at the same motion, we swing the guitars around in the same time, we do everything. That it was so clinical about what hair metal was at that point in time, that it was pretty much the stamp on, like, this is it. This is all that exists of this now. And Nirvana came out at about the same moment, and it was immediately, everybody said, fuck this noise, and went over to Seattle grunge. Because somebody is going to always figure out a way to game the system or see what the system is and say, oh yeah, well, that's all it takes. Okay, well, let's do the best version of that. And the best version of that isn't the best version of that. The best version of that is the people who are doing it because they purely love it, and because they dedicate themselves to it, and because it's their all-encompassing being. But it's really funny because the industry is like, well, yeah, but I can't market your love. I have to market a look, and I have to market a sound, and I have to market a style that people are familiar with, so that I can play this and it leads directly into the next thing that sounds just like it, and leads directly into the next thing that's just like it. And we get 10 of those, and then we restart the loop again.
Yeah, and you can definitely see that in the trends of each decade. I mean, like with Nirvana came Soundgarden and Pearl Jam, and all those grunge bands, and same thing with hair metal. Like everybody was trying to one up one another, or try to sound like whatever band, or even existing bands, like when Judas Priest was on tour with Pantera. Shortly after, they came out with Painkiller because Pantera had an influence on their writing during that time.
Yeah.
Huh, I never
so
knew.
Like, I mean, that definitely kind of goes hand in hand, I think, with any genre and any era that people are going to jump on the bandwagon. I just was basically saying that, like, people that, I went to a music college to try to gain some more knowledge, and it was a music business combined with a music school, and there were people in my class that were not musicians, and they were very computer illiterate. Like they really didn't even know how to operate a computer, but yet there was a keyboard in front of them that allowed them to record samples or sequences, just randomly pressing different keys. And the assignment was to, record such and such a song. And so like they had no knowledge in the instrument, let alone writing, but somehow they were able to record it.
Right.
And receive credit and a grade on it. And I equivalent a lot of modern pop and R&B kind of the same way. Like there's 6 or 7 people that have a hand in writing whatever they're putting out, but they really don't have a whole lot of knowledge in what they're doing. And
yeah, I mean, I almost went to the Atlanta Institute of Music. It was at the time when everybody was going to Musicians Institute for GIT or BIT or whatever. And I was really convinced. I'm like, this is what I want to do. This is what I want to go do. But I would have had no clue. I would have stepped in there and just immediately been over my head, being surrounded by people who were actual musicians who had dedicated themselves. So I wound up going to a local college for music and pretty quickly determined like what was in my head was not what doing that was. And there were incredibly talented people in my classes, and they were all really wonderful and fun to work with. And I learned a lot from them. But in the end, it's like, it's 30 years later and I'm not a musician. But I was listening to some Ed Sheeran song the other day with my wife in the car, and the chorus is pretty poppy and stuff, and I start singing along to it, except I was singing No Scrubs by TLC because it was the exact same tune. And my wife was like, holy shit. She's like, that's really cool that you could just pick that out and do that. I'm like, that's not musical talent though. That's math.
Yeah.
And a lot of music can come down to math if you don't feel anything about it. And if you don't have the non-technical side, but the emotional side to it. And both of those things are valuable. But that's exactly what I'm saying, though, is that there's one that's been emphasized, which is making beats and coming up with just a hook somewhere, as Blues Traveler would put it. And the other is someone who pours your entire life into it.
Sure.
Yeah, I think music,
I
like
agree.
Movies are all going to become relatively recycled. Like, I think in a less obvious fashion. So, I mean, clearly in the past 10 years, there have been, 3 reboots of Spider-Man? So,
yeah, right.
You saying that what you said it was Ed Sheeran? I don't know. I kind of tuned out when you said Ed Sheeran because I lost some respect for you. But, you said that
I appreciate
was
the Blues Traveler slide in though.
that's yeah. Corey's good for something once in a while, but to say that Ed Sheeran is basically just playing TLC, I think you're going to see a lot of that where, and you kind of already do. Consider Vanilla Ice and the Queen song. I just put a one extra beat. It's a different song. So I think you're going to see more shit like that, and that sucks because there are how many notes, how many sounds can you make with a guitar? How many sounds can you make with an instrument?
Sure.
When I was in Nashville, someone's like, "Hey, let's go to this bar. There's this awesome band." I'm like, "Whatever, I'm down." I also wasn't paying for anything, and it was like this girl with a keyboard and a sheet over her head, and the 4 people I was with, they're like, "This is so fucking strange. This sucks. Let's go." And I'm like, I don't care for it, but I would stay and watch it because it's interesting. If nothing else, it's different. And you know what? This girl is making her own music. It's weird as fuck, and I don't understand it, but she's making it, and she's on the stage. So why leave?
That's awesome.
I totally got outvoted and I had to leave.
That perspective on it, and especially if it's different, if it sticks out, if it's not following, the mainstream format, I think that that demands a little bit more respect. And
I mean, I have a lot of people who won't come and see us play because they're like, "Oh, it sounds so cool," and then your singer screams. I'm like, what? I'm like, give me an hour of your life. I'm not saying you have to love it. Just come and see what we do. If you still don't like it, cool. But it's an hour of your life. What else are you going to fucking do? Sit at home and watch TV? You know?
Well, I think people going out to shows, I think, is not as common as it used to be either. I mean, venues are having a tough time staying open, and you know, a lot of factors involved with that. You know, the smoking ban and DUI laws. You know that of which is a good thing, but like,
right,
people don't go out don't smoke and party and enjoy shows as much as they used to either. I don't think.
No, I mean, that's a good point. Another one I hear a lot of since I'm on my complaining soapbox is you play so late. And to which I say is, it's late for me too. Like, I get up and I go to work just like you do. I said, but you stand there and sip a beer. It's like, I have to be incredibly physical for 45 minutes.
Yeah.
Don't fucking complain.
And then load all your shit up in your van or truck. Yeah. Drive home and go from being wired to being able to go to bed to get up in the fucking morning.
Yeah, and a lot of times people are like, "Oh, that's cool. You play in Milwaukee all the time," and I'm like, "Yeah, it's great." And then I get home at 4 a.m. because we play at 11 or 12 or whatever, and then you pack up and then you sit around because you have to sit around and socialize. You don't want to just leave. You don't want to be that guy. Well, now I'm finally leaving at 2 a.m. Well, then I got to drive 2 hours to get home, and then I have to take a shower, and then I got to go to bed, and then I'm fucking awake at 8 a.m. It's like, but it's worth it. To me, it's worth it. I don't know how. Kyle, you had a different situation because you lived in Minneapolis. I mean, you literally was like, what, fucking 20 minutes to wherever venue you'd play at, with the exception of when you were on tour. But
yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. Like, I think that does separate, somebody who's passionate from somebody that just wants to be famous. Like you have to take the good with the bad. I mean, there's going to be times that you play at 10 or 20 of people or hundreds or thousands, and you got to put on the same show regardless. And, people, when you just put it out there for what it is, like, playing a show in Milwaukee, living in Minneapolis. Okay, well, it's a 5-hour drive and you got a half-hour, 45-minute set, and you gotta get there early for load in, and you gotta stay late for load out, and you get stiffed, and you don't get paid, or you get paid very little, and now you gotta find some place to stay or drive back late. And most people are like, well, that sounds stupid. That's too much work, and what are you getting out of that? And
you wind up in a green room situation.
What's that?
I said, or you wind up in a green room situation.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I think it's one of the greatest feelings in the world, to be on stage. And I've always felt like it's worth it no matter what the situation, because the stories you accumulate on tour and the friendships you make. I think being in a band, regardless of the genre, is kind of the secret to eternal youth. Like it allows you to have that excitement and the creativeness and the ambition of when you were a teenager. And if you stay driven, you can continue it as long as you want. And I mean, like, I've been trying to hit up a lot of concerts of older musicians that I haven't seen, and the oldest being Tony Bennett. The guy is 91 years old, and he's still on stage. And I think that is amazing. And Willie Nelson is another one. He's 85 and he's still playing. And it's a talent and a gift that you're given. I think it's a shame to see people not use it or not exercise that passion.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, I think all bullshit aside, like it's very.
Hold on. I'm sorry. Hold on 1 second.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, my son just woke up.
That's okay, man.
I just paused the audio real quick for you. I mean, we're still on YouTube, but take your time.
Okay. Please hold up when I was outside. I can. Okay. Hold on, one more minute. I was talking with you. Okay.
How's Corey?
I'm good.
Yeah, go ahead, right now. Yeah, so
Yeah.
sorry, my son gets when I have the day off, it's daddy day, so like he fusses when he's not with me, so I'm just gonna walk around and try to calm him down a little bit.
Yeah,
Not a problem, man.
Sorry.
No.
It's okay.
So basically, you were able to pause the show.
Well, yeah. So, like I said, we're still on YouTube, so the video will be there, which nobody watches. But I record all the audio locally in Audition, so I just paused the recording for now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So
I'm sorry about that, guys.
No, don't be.
Oh man.
Believe
me, my kid had night terrors when he was young, and it wasn't like I was doing podcasts or anything at that point, but it's still I understand what it's like when your kid wakes up and it's a moment of, okay, how's this going to go? Are you going to go back to sleep? You're not going back to sleep. All right, well, let's just work with this.
Yeah, exactly. It's excuse me. Yeah, I don't know if Matt told you the backstory or not, but like when I moved out to Michigan 2 years ago, basically became a husband, father, and stepfather of two teenagers pretty much all at once. So it was a pretty big transition, but I don't know, it's awesome now, and it feels great to be a father.
Yeah.
trying to rub it in that I'll never have kids.
Well, I don't know about that.
As you're drinking your beer on a Sunday night, and maybe you're the one rubbing it in, Matt.
No, not at all. I love my friends' children. I just do not want my own.
Yeah, I don't know. Like,
it takes a special person, and I respect the shit out of every fucking one of you. It's just not for me.
Sure.
And that's,
I can understand that.
Yeah, and everyone's like, I think you'd be a great dad. I'm like, I don't doubt that I would be a fine dad, but part of me just, I don't know. It's just never really appealed to me. Alyssa and I talked about it early in our relationship. We both agreed that we weren't, kids was not in our future. I'm godfather to one of our guitar player, JR's daughter. If something happened to him, I would take that kid in a heartbeat, and I would treat her like my own. I would treat every one of my friends' children like my own. But I'm cool with that. Like, I'm cool with that level of responsibility. I just, I don't know. It just never, ever was something I wanted to do.
I was kind of like that for quite a while. It sounds cliche, but like, if or, when it happens, like it definitely can change your outlook. Because, each milestone is an experience that I never had before and never really thought about.
Yeah.
And, so, I think, that, preaching there say, well, you should, but like, if it happened, if it came up and it happened to you, I think, your outlook would change a little bit just because it's just unlike anything I've ever experienced before.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
Oh yeah. I mean, yeah, because it's literally. I mean, I don't know if you secretly had a child when you were younger, and you forgot about it.
No.
Yeah. But yeah, yeah. If something happened and we ended up with a kid, first I'd have to figure out who the milkman is and kill him. But I would take care of it. It's not like I wouldn't. Right. It's not like I would run away. But it's just yeah.
Well, and it's having a kid later on in life too, I think is a lot different because I was 35 when he was born, so like I got to spend quite a few years doing my own thing and focusing on music, and it I think it's a little easier to settle down, when you're older. I think to be 19 or 20 and advocate, I think that would be tough.
Holy fuck, would that be tough? And like there's a lot of times even at 33, like I don't think I have my shit together. I couldn't even imagine trying to take care of someone else at 19. I could barely take care of myself at 19.
Yeah, I think it's important to get out in the world and give whatever you want to go after a shot.
Oh yeah.
And then before making that kind of commitment.
Yeah, I mean, I work with a lot of people who like went from high school straight to college and straight into working, and I'm like, yeah, I didn't go back to college till I was like my early 20s. I didn't graduate till I was late 20s, and I've only been doing this for 5 years. They just kind of stare at me, and it's like, but I am not upset. No part of me regrets my decision making or the order in which I did these things, because I could never go back and do what I did at 19 and 20, or 19 to 25. But I can always go back to school, and I can always go back to finding a new job.
Sure. And that's normal to switch up jobs nowadays.
Yeah, which is weird. I mean, I've said this to Corey, but there's a lot of days it's like, do I even really still enjoy working in IT? Like, do I still like doing this, or do I just do it because that's what I'm doing? But
no, that's the phase I'm in right now, is that I've spent the last nearly 5 years doing IT after a 2-year break from working when I had gotten laid off from my job before that, where I'd been retail for 20 years. So now I'm in the situation, I'm in a new state, and have to figure out what is the next step. And is it I just try to find exactly the same kind of job I was just in out in California, or do I look for something similar or different, or what? And how do we make it all work now? But I feel like I loved my job so much, and I'm trying to attribute how much of that was to the work versus the people, because the people were spectacular. But I was definitely getting frustrated in the last few months there because of different situations, and it was getting to be more of a workload and everything, which is fine. I just wish I could have seen it out a little bit longer to know if it was still my dream job a year into that kind of new situation versus was I hitting my breaking point, or was I just like, this is the next phase of it?
Sure. Yeah. I don't know. I think when making a big transition, especially moving states, it makes it nice to slide into the same field that you were in, because I was working at a pawn shop for many years in Minneapolis, and I chose to get a job at another pawn shop and move to Michigan. But I've been doing that for 17 years now, and it's been nice, as far as adapting to all the other changes. But I'm kind of burnt out in that industry, and I kind of want to try something different soon. But I think it's different for everybody. There's many different chapters in life, and sometimes it's time to write an entirely new one.
And that's super true. And I think a lot of times people forget that Like, and there's so many options. I just realized that I never started recording again. So this awesome conversation is going to be lost, or it's going to be on YouTube forever. So lost, basically. But people forget that, like, there's so many things to experience, and life is literally made to be experienced. And if you just say, like, well, this is what I do now. Like, I was talking to my dad, that my parents were here earlier, and he did title insurance for houses. Kyle, you've never owned a home, have you?
Well, I'm in my wife's home, so yeah, kind of.
No,
I've never gone through the process of purchasing a home. No.
Yeah, a lot of times people are like, "What does your dad do?" And I'm like, "Until I bought a house, I had no fucking clue what he did." But when you sign all the title paperwork, you do it at like a title place, and that's what he did. He ran title companies. But
okay.
I was talking to him because he's like, he retired, air quotes, to working 3 days a week, and I asked him, I'm like, well, how long are you going to do that for? And he goes, I don't know, maybe it's my birthday, so like next June. And my mom retires in March. And
oh wow,
I'm like, well, I mean, if you still like doing it, then why not? And he just kind of looked at me and he shook his head. I'm like, I guess. Like I think he's just doing it to do it at this point. He doesn't actually enjoy it. And I kind of wondered, like, how long have you hated doing this for? And I made some comments to my mom. I'm like, because she's like, oh, I don't work Mondays for the rest of the year, and then after the first of the year, I'm not going to work Fridays, and then I retire in March. I'm like, I only have 35 years to go.
Yeah, when I think you're that close to retirement, I think you just kind of bite the bullet and just keep going until you're done. But I think that's kind of a generational thing too. Like,
yeah,
you just stayed at a job for decades, for like the baby boomer era.
He's also working for companies that he started. So I think he has that hat in the ring too, where it's like, I think he's worried that if he leaves, it's going to fall apart. So he started a title company in 1985 called Sheboygan Title Company. He sold it to like a nationwide chain, and whoever they appointed as president, like, fucking just destroyed the whole thing, like ran it straight into the ground. So he shortly thereafter then starting/buying more companies. So I think part of him is worried that if he stops, it's going to happen there too. Granted, I've never actually asked him. Oh no, for sure, he takes pride in absolutely everything he does, and I respect that. I respect the shit out of my old man. But it's, part of it's just like, man, you got to fucking stop, because it's like, you're 68. He'll be 69. But it's like, dude, you still, like, yeah, you're 69, but he's in pretty decent shape for being almost 70 years old. And it's like, dude, you got shit that you should be doing before you kick off. So I fully believe in, there's a right time to start working and there's a right time to stop, so that you can experience life on both ends.
Yeah, I agree with you. I do think, it's different for everybody. And, my dad has been retired for almost 2 years now, but he's played in his band ever since, the late 60s. And he had more shows booked this year than he ever has in his life. And it's because he was retired. He was able to play more shows and focus more. He also farms. So hold on one second. Mm-hmm. Sorry about that, guys.
Yeah.
I can't remember what we're talking about.
Yeah, me neither. You think we're good to start recording again?
No, that was recorded, right?
No. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Do you think I'm good to start again, or do you think you're? I don't want to like make you feel rushed or anything, but I just.
No, that's cool. Let's see. You have an estimate about how long you think we'll be talking? Maybe like 20 minutes or so, half hour?
As much as you want. I figure when I'll start recording, and then we'll just kind of talk about The Shining. We can wrap it up in about 15 if you want.
Hold on 1 second. I'm just gonna get away from now. Quick,
Yeah.
1 second.
Yeah. I like that beat hangs out now.
What?
I like that beat hangs out now.
Yeah, unfortunately I had to close all the other stuff because something keeps causing my audio to click out, and
It's fucking weird. You have a much better internet connection than I do too.
It's a good internet connection. I don't know if it's because of different browsers, because of how the stuff's hooked up. Like something changed in the setup with the move, and
Pornography.
I wish.
Did you hear what Kyle and I were talking about?
Not exactly.
He's going to get an idea of how much time he's got, and then
Sure.
when we're going to start recording, we'll just plow through The Shining.
Yeah.
And then get him out of here.
Yeah, that's fine. We get a solid 15 minutes about the actual movie.
Yeah.
That would be a first for us in about 100 episodes.
Yeah, he's like, well, how much time is it? I'm like, I don't know. We can talk about The Shining for 15.
Okay, sorry about that, guys.
No.
So yeah, I got about a half hour.
Okay. I know how I am, so I'll aim for about 15.
Okay.
And then
cool.
Plan on having you out of here in a half an hour.
Sorry about all the breaks. That was going to be a little bit more available for me. It's kind of unpredictable. So sorry.
Dude, you have nothing to apologize for.
No, not at all.
All right, let's go ahead and get into the movie, The Shining, which I learned my wife had never seen, so I'm actively filing divorce paperwork.
Well, you're going to lose 2 wives.
What? You hadn't seen it?
I have never, up until this point, watched it, I think, straight through before. I am so familiar with it. Not a day goes by that I don't think Aaron's rewatching The Shining or Poltergeist or any number of like 5 to 10 different horror movies, but I've never like been, oh, I need to go and watch The Shining. And so, yeah, it wasn't a new experience, but it was kind of new.
It's not a quick watch. It's a long, kind of a slow-moving movie.
Yeah, I didn't realize it was 2 hours long. I mean, I had seen it before, but I never really thought about how long it was until this. Which, I don't know. I don't know where to start because there's so much to talk about. It is easily probably the most, I don't know if recreated or referenced is the better term, but that movie ever. I mean, think about the fact that The Simpsons did an entire section on it. Just the countless references to it.
The Ready Player One movie that came out last year, there was a scene that was supposed to be about another thing, and they couldn't do it, so they wound up referencing The Shining instead.
Yeah,
and pretty well. When Erin and I watched that a few months ago, she started laughing because, like, one, how well they referenced it, but two, just to see it show up in this. And I had to kind of wonder, like, I know that the whole thing about Ready Player One is movie references and all that kind of stuff, but like so much of it was spent on The Shining, and I don't know how much of the audience for that movie today recognized of The Shining from its time, because when did the movie come out?
Ready Player One?
1980.
No. Sorry, Shining, yeah, 1980.
Oh.
Kyle's right.
Yeah. So that's that's a good long bit of time in between to have it be such a big part of a modern day film.
Yeah, and I mean, I know it's pretty common knowledge that Kubrick didn't stay true to the book. I've never read the book because I think it's common knowledge. I can't read. But the movie is still so fucking good. Like in every facet, it's just a good movie.
I always heard that Stephen King didn't care for it, and that's why he made the made-for-TV movie version of it, which I didn't really care for. But I guess I never read the book either, but I hear there were just some parts of the movie that changed what the novel had written it.
One of the things about the King versus Kubrick stuff is that it's claimed, at least, that Kubrick was kind of slamming King with some of the things he did. So in the book, the bug that Nicholson drives is red, but in the movie it's yellow. And then at some point later on, when the caretaker is driving up, he sees a truck wreck, and underneath the truck is this destroyed red Volkswagen, and that's supposedly be a fuck you to King of like, yeah, I just ran over your thing to make my thing. And that's one of the things that we have to talk about with this movie, is that there is it's a sect, but it's almost like a cult of people who are so worshipful of Kubrick and his films and the things that he does. And this movie in particular has so many goddamn points of view of like, oh, it's about the Nazis, or oh, it's about Native Americans, oh, it's about this, it's about that. It's Kubrick's admission that he helped stage the moon landing. That the movie as itself can't really stand on its own without having to deal with all of these bullshit people that are the same frame of mind as 9/11 conspiracy theorists, in how much they believe they understand the inner workings of this movie better than anybody else who fucking watched it or the people who worked in making it.
You were referring to, I can't remember the name of the documentary, but it was on Netflix. Basically, like pointing out like the product placement throughout the movie and the different conspiracies involved.
Yeah, the Indian on the packaging for the, I think it's like baking powder or something, and because of the Native American artwork and stuff up there. Yeah, and I did watch that. Room 237, I think is what it's called. It's named after the room in the movie, although in the book it was 217. And there's theories about like, well, there is no room 217, or there is no room 237 in the hotel, and like all this back and forth. In wikis, there's all these things of like, oh yeah, we called up the place and it's this, and then somebody else says it's complete opposite. And that's the problem, is that everybody has made their theories up, but that movie just kind of laid it out for everybody to watch. But those things have existed for years. It's like the people who talk about the Hotel California album from the Eagles and how it has to do with the Satanic Church, and Anton LaVey is on the cover, except he's not. And so it's that same kind of crap. And I'm like, man, just watch the fucking movie and get what you get out of it. But some people just are adamant believers, and that just doesn't sit right with me.
You know, me neither. And it's funny you should bring up the Eagles, because I actually just watched an Eagles documentary, and Don Henley addresses, Hotel California and, what it's supposed to be about, and like all these, people like having their own takes on what it actually means. And he said that, it's some songs are just better not to be revealed what, it's actually about. It's up for interpretation. And I think that version of The Shining, I think, is kind of very similar to Hotel California. Like, I don't really think there was any conspiracies. There might have been some hidden gems that Kubrick put in there here and there, but I don't think it's really a conspiracy type movie. myself. And
I don't know. Like Corey said, I just wish people would just watch the movie.
yeah,
And that sucks. But I mean, think about the fact. Think of every reference of this movie, or everything that has referenced this movie. Like Slipknot has a music video. 30 Seconds to Mars did a music video in the hotel, also kind of in the vein of the movie. Murder by Death plays a show at the hotel every year on New Year's Eve. I believe you can pay extra.
Family?
Yeah, and I believe you can pay extra to stay in room 217 or 237,
Oh, that's
whichever
pretty cool.
you want to believe. Yeah. And I mean, you can just go visit the Stanley. Like it's there. You can go do it too. And you know, people like I've wanted to go there. I kind of got it from you. Like you went to the house, the Texas Chainsaw Massacre house to eat breakfast. I wasn't able to get there when I was in Austin, but when I was down there, the gas station is now a barbecue restaurant.
That's awesome.
So yeah, after you and I had talked and I went down there for work, I flew in a little early and went there, and the bus from the original movie is like sitting out front. So it's like to be able to
That's really
see
cool.
and to be able to sit inside of a place that was in one of your favorite movies is just so fucking cool. So
yeah, it's a new experience.
Yeah, so going back to what I'm saying is like just enjoy the movie and enjoy what it's supposed to be and enjoy what else you can do as a result.
Yeah, but isn't that kind of before we had the internet, everything was urban legend. Everything was, there's razors and apples at Halloween, and there's these different things. And you didn't have something that could actually definitively say whether or not it was true. You'd hear Richard Gere and hamster stories and believe them because, well, who the fuck made this up? And why has it traveled around so far that everybody knows this if it's not true? And that's what happens with these things. And plus, when you have churches that give conspiracy theories about record albums, that's supposed to be your authoritative, like they're telling me, sadly, what to think in some cases. And how much do you question your peers versus the unknown? And that's what an X-Files is, and that's what a Men in Black and the stuff in Nevada is. But honestly, at this point in time, we should have some fucking idea as to if any of this is verifiable. But we're in an era where people believe that the earth is flat. I just I don't blame people for having conspiracy theories about stuff, but I blame people for perpetuating it to the point where it just gets louder and louder so that you inevitably find more people that believe it, because it's like, well, if all of these people are on it, it's like, well, stop fucking validating it. Yeah. Stop making it be a thing because that's dumb. I don't need to explain to somebody that we actually have evidence that the moon landing happened. But you keep screaming loud enough that, well, no, it was all faked because of Kubrick. Fuck. More and more people are going to buy into that shit because they don't want to believe the truth, because they don't trust the truth for so many other things.
It's kind of things like that kind of make movies or albums, special. Like, the spinning the record backwards, they say Paul is dead, and,
right. Yeah.
Things like that. Like it builds hype and builds an urban legend around, that movie or album. And I think it adds mystique to it, which I think is actually kind of cool, even if, you don't believe it. It adds a different edge to it.
Like in that documentary, the Room 237, they show a scene of how they're talking about how they played the movie forwards and they played the movie backwards over top of it, and you see how things line up. And that looks really cool. And I'm a person who has downloaded the Pink Floyd Wizard of Oz movie with those things, sync point happened, and watched it all the way through. And it's like, yeah, there are parts of this where it's like, shit, that really syncs up well. But you also kind of have to realize there's no fucking way Pink Floyd sat there and said, oh, let's make an album and the entirety of it syncs up with Wizard of Oz. It's just, nobody put the time and effort into that, because what did they get out of it? In the long run, it's like, it's an album that sold on its own or didn't sell it on its own, and it sold on its own fine. And it was years later that somebody came out of their fucking parents' basement and said, dude, I was watching The Wizard of Oz and I had Floyd on.
Yeah, I think that was just a strange coincidence, but again, it adds a different spin on it.
So do you think that not just Kubrick, but this movie in particular gets more attention and more value given to it because of shit like that versus how good of a movie it is on its own? Because when it came out, it was not a beloved movie. Critics didn't like it. People didn't think it was that great. It took it a while to catch on. And did it catch on because someone started leaking shit about what a genius Kubrick was? Because he had a failing in the movie right before this one, and that's why he wound up doing this. Is he was so pissed off about how poorly receptive the audience was to his previous film, or is this movie something that is just really good? Because I'm gonna admit I'm not a Kubrick fan. There is not a Kubrick movie that is in a list of like I love that movie. It would be the closest thing would be Dr. Strangelove, and that's more because of Peter Sellers. But the rest of his stuff, I think my favorite Kubrick movie is probably AI, which was as much Spielberg as it was his.
Sure. Oh, I don't know. I'm not really a fan of Kubrick's work overall myself either. However, I'm a huge Jack Nicholson fan, and that was the major selling point for me to get in the movie in the first place. Because I think first time I saw it was shortly after the '89 Batman came out, and I was a huge Nicholson fan from that point on. So I wanted to, try to discover anything that he was in, and so like that was the reason I watched it. It wasn't because I was a Kubrick fan.
And
I think one of the things his work is very, very slow moving and boring and sometimes hard to watch because it's just not captivating enough. But I think that style works well in The Shining because it builds the suspense of, Jack Sully getting cabin fever and going to the main part of the plot.
Yeah. So one of the things about the movie is that King didn't want Nicholson because he had done One Who Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and felt like it was too much of a giveaway that people expect seeing him to be crazy by that point. And my thing with Nicholson is not that I don't like Nicholson, but that he's always Nicholson in anything that he plays. You put him in Joker makeup, he's still Jack Nicholson. You make him the devil, he's still Jack Nicholson. I completely buy Jack Nicholson as the devil or as a Wolfman, but it's because of who he is as much as the part that he's playing. But there were people that were mentioned like Robin Williams, who at that point was still really early in his career and was pretty much just Mork. I don't think he'd done Popeye yet.
Yeah.
There were a lot of other people that were supposed to be tonally down, and then you get to see them have a breakdown. And Nicholson is just sort of manic as soon as you see him on the screen. I don't hate the depiction because it does make it very easy to buy into how crazy he goes. But I also understand that if you're looking for someone to see them break down as opposed to being on the edge of breakdown and then it just happening, you might want something different. But what you like his depiction in this, though?
Say it again.
You like how he depicted the character in this?
I did because, I would agree with you. Jack pretty much plays himself in almost all of his movies, but it's such a potent character that he's one of the few actors that I think can get by with that. But like, him going nuts and just that psychotic side of him. I think he played it very well. I mean, even to the point where, from what I hear, Shelley Duvall had to undergo extensive therapy afterwards because of it messed her up. Like his character frightened her in real life.
Yeah, I also hear part of that was because of how Kubrick the demands that he put on them as actors and how long the days were and stuff. And he constantly was changing the script on both of them. I guess Nicholson had complaints about that too. Is like he didn't even bother learning the script at points because he knew they were just going to give him changes a few minutes later. So he was reading it right before doing the scene. But yeah, and Shelley Duvall gets a lot of shit for her depiction in this movie of how her character is. And she's pretty over the top. She's so high strung emotionally. But again, I see that could be what you want from the setup of these characters, because she always sounds like she's on edge. She sounds like since the point where Jack hurt Danny and then had to give up drinking because of it, that she is an abused spouse that she never quite tells everybody the real story. She gets almost there, but she's still kind of making excuses in her head. And so when she reaches her breaking point of like, you've hurt our son again, I'm done with you. And then it starts to become more supernatural, where she starts experiencing things as well, that she breaks because she doesn't know how to take back the fact that she blamed her husband, if this is him or if it's something else. But she's in a situation where she's got to be in fear for her life. I didn't hate her character, but I do understand that her character is very different in the book. She's got more agency there. She's a more strong-willed character there.
Yeah. I think both her and Jack's roles were very believable. You know, they you could tell, you could read the backstory of their characters together, based on, you know, how they both were telling about, you know, what happened, you know, when he was drinking and that he wouldn't do it again, and that, you know, that subject being touchy, and I think that all helped form the what's a word, just how they depicted their characters. I think that made it all believable.
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. One thing that kind of drove me nuts is how limp-wristedly Shelley Duvall would hold a knife while running.
Oh, right.
Which it seems so like minute, but I'm like, I don't know, if I was really fearing for my life, I feel like I would hold on to that fucker like it was the end of the world.
But picture your mom. That and this depends on who your mom is. My mom is tough as shit. Yeah. My mom's a hunter. My mom has taught other people bow hunting, black powder shooting. She is a strong person, but there are definitely people in my life that I know that are much weaker and would react in that way. It's always you scream at the screen, like, don't run upstairs, don't do this, you know, why are you so weak? Why don't you fight back? But for a good amount of people, it's impossible for them to fight back. That's not in their nature of who they are. And they just become so overwhelmed with fear and inherent weakness that they can't react in the way that we'd like to think we would in a situation like that.
Right, that makes it for a good horror movie too. Like they purposely, you know, put the victims in a situation or do things that we wouldn't do ourselves. So we are on the edge of our seat saying, no, don't do that, or, you know, watch out. You know, that's part of the, I think, key elements of a good horror movie plot.
I mean, that's a good point. I mean, I do agree with that.
I don't know if you guys know this or not, but when I was in Cleveland, I went through the Christmas Story house and got to learn a little history about the making of the movie. And Bob Clark actually originally wanted to cast Jack Nicholson as the father, but since The Shining had come out not too long before, they thought it would his take on that character would be too scary and too closely associated with The Shining. So that's why they decided not to cast him.
I would really love to see a mix of The Shining and A Christmas Story. And I know I've seen the horror movie trailer cut of A Christmas Story before, but that sounds spectacular.
Yeah, that would definitely have been a completely different movie.
Yeah. I would be curious. I never really cared for A Christmas Story, but I would totally watch it with Jack Nicholson as the dad.
And Scatman Crothers got his tongue stuck to a pole out in the maze.
Yeah, right. Now, did you guys happen to see the made-for-TV version, like the Stephen King version of The Shining?
I have not.
I thought about looking for it. My wife has seen it, and she said it's really bad, which I can understand. You know, made-for-TV stuff is always kind of crapshoot anyways. But I'm interested in it because it's got Steven Weber, who I always like in things. But on top of that, I would have liked to have seen the differences from it. But at the same time, like Matt, I haven't read the book, and I feel like I would probably get more of an idea of King's vision, his original vision, not his edited years later vision of what The Shining should be, by reading that. And I just haven't done it yet.
I would recommend at least checking it out. I personally didn't care for it. But I also was partial to the original actor's version of the characters. Like the kid that played Danny in the made-for-TV version was like, was it Haley Joel Osment or kid from Sixth Sense? And I think that was, no, maybe it was somebody else. But either way, like I thought his version of the character was just really annoying and wasn't believable.
I'm looking at it real quick.
And Jack Torrance in that version wasn't as scary or aggressive as Jack's.
Yeah, and that's also the other thing. When the remake of It came out year before last, or was it last year?
Last year, 2017.
It inevitably gets comparisons to the TV version, which I've watched and is fine, but again, as a TV movie in the 90s for what it is, but it's also held to such a high esteem, one, because there's a lot of beloved actors in it, but also because Pennywise was played by Tim Curry, and who doesn't fucking love Tim Curry? So it's hard to be a remake of something that's existed, that's been in the minds of the fans for so long. I think the new It was an incredible movie. I think in many ways superior, but that's not to steal away from what the original one was. And it's not to say that you can't have a favorite, but I think it's even harder when you've got a movie that we've already discussed is so iconic, even if it's not true to what the author's original intents were for the characters in the film. People are going to automatically always think of The Shining as Jack Nicholson busting through that door, the old lady in the bathtub scene, all of that stuff. And they're doing a sequel based off of a more recent King book, Dr. Sleep, that is a sequel to the book, and in that case, more a sequel to the TV movie, where Scatman Crothers' character is still alive in it and stuff. And it's going to, I believe, suffer because it's not going to be an exact sequel to what is in more people's minds, and that is the Kubrick film, than it is to the original source material that not as many people have read and not many people have seen the TV version of.
Sure. That's interesting, though. I mean, I think for anyone that's a fan of The Shining in general, I think would probably be interested in seeing it. But like you said, I think generally, like people that aren't familiar with the novel probably wouldn't be as apt to go and watch it or understand it.
And just the fact that it's going to be compared to the location. So we had our friend Jude was on here last year, and we talked about his movie, The Incantation. Mm-hmm. And Jude went and did this movie, and it's got Dean fucking Cain in it, which is cool. But he did this movie at this place, and the place that he filmed it at is probably the biggest character of the film. You get a location like that, and you can't help but let it drive what your movie is. And I feel like the Overlook Hotel in Kubrick's film is the biggest character in that movie. As big as Jack is, as much as the stuff with Danny and the ghosts and stuff is, that hotel really is such a huge portion of what makes that movie work, and the mystery and the horror. It just has a feeling to it that draws you in and keeps you fixated. That I think that's why people become obsessed with it, is because it's so much, and you can't help but, like, if you walked into that place after that, you would just be like, you would pour over every inch of it. And a sequel is going to have to contend with that as much as it's going to have to contend with the fact of, like, well, this character didn't die, and this, obviously we can't reference Nicholson here, and these kinds of things. That place is huge.
Yeah, it's a very interesting point that you bring up, because I strongly agree with that. I think, like, location or a vehicle can be just as big of a character, if not a bigger character, than an actor. Like, the DeLorean is just as big of a character in Back to the Future as Doc Brown or Marty McFly. And, the Ghostbusters firehouse is a huge character. The Batmobile, all kinds of things like that. So yeah, I definitely agree with you on that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like they're going to do a remake of The Shining someday, and it's going to take place in Waikiki on a beach. It's like it's a series of huts. It's such a statement in and of itself, and it's key to the plot of the movie. Being trapped where they were and stuff. But they build it up from the very beginning. The helicopter shot going over it, the whole talk of, like, didn't the Donner Party happen around here? All that stuff is a part of what sets the entire tone for that film, and it traps them, and it's what they have to escape from in the end. That's another thing of, like, I don't know if that was luck or how much planning went into that location choice. I mean, he got permission to film there, and it wasn't the original inspiration for in the book. They added the maze for the film, but all that stuff really, to me, is key to what that movie, why it sticks in people's heads. Is that when I think of The Shining, I think of certain visuals more than anything. As much as the "Here's Johnny" line is like what people think of, like, the tagline for it, which was an ad lib based off of Johnny Carson, doesn't make a lot of sense in the context of the film. The pictures of that hotel and the blood coming out of the elevators and Danny riding around in his big wheel, like, that stuff is what is in my mind.
Me too.
Yeah,
me too. I think they and to be able to go and visit, a film location like that, I think, it's cool because, like, even though it's not a true story, it didn't actually happen. Like, the making of that fake story, which was the movie, did happen. That was a piece of history that happened at that specific place. And, the exteriors were the Timberland Lodge in Mount Hood, Oregon. Whereas, the interiors were a set in England, but, still to be able to either go to the Stanley where King came up with the idea and had the experience of the haunting, or to be in front of the Timberland Lodge, I think both are equally as cool to be able to witness.
Yeah, absolutely. With that being said,
well, just real fast.
Oh yeah.
So there's the point where it goes from being the breakdown in the mind of Jack, where we feel like, okay, he's talking to ghosts, he's seeing people around the hotel that obviously can't be there. He's doing all these things, and we're seeing him kind of have a mental breakdown. It goes from all of that being kind of explained as a personality, a brain that's fractured as it is, to wait, now other people are seeing this. Other people are reacting to this. It's not just Danny with his psychic abilities and the shine. The mother is seeing these things. Like when she's going through the halls and she starts seeing people, when she sees the weirdest fucking thing. The guy dressed up as the bear or the dog, going down on the guy in the room. Like, what the fuck was that about?
Yeah, that was strange.
And it was just strange. It was just, did The Shining just introduce me to furries? Fuck. But she starts seeing these things actually happening. It goes from being a film about a guy with alcoholism and mental issues to a film about the actual supernatural. And that's a big leap in that sense of like nothing up until that other than Danny's abilities really is anything about that. But like all of a sudden they're all seeing it. So the place is haunted in some way. The place is corrupting them and attacking them in some way. And we don't get a real sense as to the why. And we get a little bit of weirdness at the end where we get the photo of Jack back in the 1920s standing in that room and a photo up on the wall. And it's like, did the place absorb him? What did it do? So what do you think that the ending of that really comes down to? Because I think that that's the interpretation for us as viewers is an important part of rating it.
Yeah, that's an interesting question. I guess I've always kind of taken it, you know, at face value and never really analyzed it that deeply. But I guess to answer that question now, I would say like like a lot of horror movies, like, you know, the villain or the entity or whatever it is gains momentum and gains clear access to this plane when people believe or fear it. And I would say maybe that would have been the reason that everyone else started to see things, is because everything was becoming more real. And that's interesting, like, theory of him getting absorbed. I guess that would probably be I would agree with that theory, that he was, you know, just absorbed into the history of he's always been the caretaker.
Yeah.
Matt, do you have a thought on it?
Nope. I just watched the movie, man.
Hey, that's cool.
I'm just here so I don't get fined.
Since Scatman Crothers' character, I keep forgetting his name. He's always Scatman Crothers to me. Since his character, he's been there as the cook for a couple of years. He's got experience and time in the hotel, and while he's afraid of room 237, he kind of leads Sandy to be, don't go up there. He feels like the hotel is normal and in check enough that he can exist there while being enlightened. And so to see it take off and happen so badly for Danny and his family when he's gone, and to the point where he realizes it and comes back, something has to happen to set it off. And is it that it, like you said, it feeds off of the inherent evil that it grows in Jack, and then it becomes stronger because of it? Is it we see what we need to manipulate, like what we saw in the dad before when he killed his two girls? Is there a certain kind of person that I can grow with to get to do what I want? Or is it also that Danny's powers kind of activate it himself because he's a conduit? Does him being there kind of strengthen connection to Jack and to his mom, so that they become a part of it too? That's the stuff that doesn't get explained in this, that I would have liked to have seen feed out a little more. But that's what I would expect to be in the book. And as I understand it from what I've read, that's not what the book so much is about.
Is it exploring the possibility that because of his sixth sense, that he's able to kind of create this alternate timeline of they were the ones that were originally involved in what happened, rather than Grady and his family?
maybe that's the thing that I don't know. Without explanation of the daughters, or why the dad went off. It's just the "you've always been here" is the hotel turning him into Grady because it needs him to be, to accomplish what it wants to accomplish. And can it not do that when there's so many normal people around? When there's too much activity, it can't get anybody's attention enough. But when you're there and you get that sort of Ren and Stimpy space madness, cabin fever esque, like my head can't get outside of itself. I feel like all of this would be solved if we had the internet in that hotel. That's what I'm saying. Is that if I could just sit here and watch YouTube videos and people playing games on Twitch and fuck around instead of having to watch some black and white TV with barely a signal, then maybe I would be okay.
Well, maybe that's part of the brilliance of Kubrick, is the fact that he did leave it open-ended and he didn't explain it. Maybe that's what makes it more of a unique ending. Because I don't know, like, I think things in general, I think, are analyzed a lot deeper nowadays. Like, people want to find the meaning, or they want to find the angle of whether or not to be offended. Yeah. And I think movies back then and prior to The Shining, I think were just accepted more at, face value and didn't really look into it that deep. But that's just my opinion on that. Like, for example, like, people are now analyzing characters of Sesame Street and their sexual preference. Like, that thought had never crossed anyone's mind before. Why are people being that analytical with things?
The Sesame Street thing, I think, is, as much as there is some people want to label stuff, I do feel that there are people out there that want to be able to see characters on TV that they can identify with, and so they want them to be their LGBT heroes, and to feel like that they're okay. And I have no problem with giving kids that, but I also, if the creators of the characters aren't like, well, that's what these characters are, then they're not, and you can't tell them that they're wrong. But I also don't think Sesame Street is an institution that wouldn't give kids that as well, at some point, to say, yeah, we'll have gay monsters on the show. They have an HIV positive Muppet on the show. I think that Sesame Street is one of those things that tries to be so inclusive that it's not really like they're saying, oh, we don't want Bert and Ernie to be gay because we disagree with it. It's just, no, it's okay to be two guys who just live together, who are just best friends and love each other. Like Matt and I tell each other we love each other all the time. And it's not
together yet.
What?
We don't live together yet.
Yet, but I mean, in a situation where that could happen, I don't think that you have to exclude one to have the other.
No, I don't think so either. I think in people searching for comfort to label something, I think kind of pigeonholes, or kind of paints whatever that is into a corner. Like, like defining what style a metal band is nowadays. Like, there's so many subgenres now. Mm-hmm. And, when Motorhead, was around, they just said they were a rock and roll band, but they were classified by their fans, 8 different subgenres. And it's like, I think to be not so analytical and be a little bit more vague, like, they're a hard edge rock and roll band. Mm-hmm. I think it leaves it open more for people to identify things together and be a fan of something together. But when it's analyzed to the point where you're dividing how you're going to define it or categorize it so many times, that's when you start to get into arguments and disagreements, and people start getting offended because you're excluding an element, excuse me, an element of the broader categorization of it.
Right. I mean, and I'm acutely aware that I am a white heterosexual cis male. I have had no shortage of things that were made in my image that I grew up with. So when I have Superman is a white heterosexual cis male superhero, and then someone else comes along and it's like, well, what if Superman was played by an African American actor in a movie or a Hispanic actor in a movie? I can understand, well, that's not who Superman is, that argument of like, well, he's always been this. On the other hand, shit, it's not like I've got a shortage of other white, heterosexual, cisgendered males to look at in superheroes that I could still identify with. So, all right, man, have your black Superman. It's not going to disrupt anything for me. But we become so possessive over the things that matter to us that don't shit on my childhood kind of crap, that we feel like, oh, well, don't take that away from me, get your own thing. It's like, well, sorry, but there's been hundreds of years of you not letting me have my own thing, and it's still kind of taking some time to even the playing field. So I kind of feel like, yeah, let me have this one. You know what? I don't have a problem with it. Fucking have it.
Yeah, I see a point with that. I mean, like, that's happened with every actor that's played Batman or the Joker. You know, everyone has had their different takes and everyone has their different preferences of who they like the best. But ultimately, you know, each movie that comes out defines a new generation. And I think, you know, like me and my sons, like, you know, compare Heath Ledger and Jack Nicholson all the time. And I think they're both great.
Notice you didn't say Leto.
Joker, but I think they're both awesome because they're different. So
yeah, and back to the Superman thing, like I had real problems with Man of Steel.
Like you were saying with it, I think it's very similar. Like both Pennywises are completely different, and I think that when things are remade, it's important to have a new spin on it. Unlike Nightmare on Elm Street, I thought the new version of Freddy was terrible and nowhere near as in your face as Robert Englund. But I think he was trying to be somewhat similar to the original character, but just without the edge.
I think without the humor. I think it was all edge and no charm and personality that the original Freddy had, which Freddy shouldn't be charming and personable because he's a guy who is a molester who kills people in their dreams. But that is sort of what made the character fun and enduring is it's in the era of horror movies where we rooted for the villain. And in the Nightmare on Elm Street remake, which Jackie Earle Haley, I have a huge amount of respect for, just in a ton of stuff that he's done throughout his entire life. But I agree with you. It was not for me what I wanted out of for Freddy Krueger. And what I was saying, Superman, I did not like the Man of Steel movie because in my mind, there's no reason for Superman to kill. And to write a story where Superman has to kill the villain defeats the entire purpose of Superman to me. But again, every new version, there's the opportunity to reinterpret or to make it something for a different audience. It's just, if you're going to get to the purity of what I see of Superman, it's not his race, it's not his sexuality, it's his values. And I think if you change him by changing his values, you're missing the point of doing a Superman story. But the rest of it is just, in a lot of ways, window dressing. I get that it's not up to me. You know, I have the ability to make my own art. I have the ability to tell my own stories and stuff. And so when I do that, then I can be the one who complains, and I can be Stephen King and say, you know, fuck Kubrick, making this thing with Steven Weber for ABC.
Sure.
But even in the end, King has to, and I think does, admit that Kubrick's shining brought a lot of eyes to his work that wouldn't have existed otherwise, and appreciates the fact that even if it wasn't a perfect interpretation of his book, it was something that was great art on its own.
Yeah, I think it's a very important movie in general, like just for the history of film. I think it's I know it's definitely been rated very high in like, you know, scariest movie of all time or top 100 important movies in history. And, you know, because I don't think a movie like that could ever really be put out like that nowadays. Like, you know, I think just the tempo of the movie, I think itself makes it different than anything else that's been released.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if you've seen it. I saw it. My wife and I were actually just talking about it earlier. Movie that came out this year. Neither of us liked at all, but a lot of people really did. Hereditary. And I think that the pacing of that is slow, and it expects a lot from the audience to stay dedicated to it and to follow the story at points where it's not really trying to tell you stuff. But that is the closest I can think of something to the pace of what this movie is. I just really hated it.
I was caught off guard because I knew nothing about it. Basically, it was just kind of a movie that I was tagging along with. Another person made the choice of which movie, and I didn't know it was, you know, that type of movie, and it caught me off guard. So I thought it was a disturbing movie, and I think, yeah, it definitely had a slower pace, but it surprised me as far as horror movies nowadays, because most new horror movies, I don't think have an element of have the old school element of actually scaring people. But I actually would put that up there with The Exorcist or The Omen as far as, you know, just all out scary movie.
Oh, then we should definitely have you back sometime to do a full review of it, because that's just it. Is my opinion is my opinion, and I don't try to label it as being better or smarter than anybody else's. I can give examples. Like last week we did the new Halloween, and Matt, throughout most of my talk about it, thought I must have hated the movie because I tore it apart. But in the end, I liked it a lot. And that's just it, is I will talk shit about a movie that I like as much as a movie that I don't like, because in the end, I'm looking to give an honest review of my take of it, but it's just my take. And I'd much rather talk about a movie like Hereditary with someone who loved it versus a person who's just going to agree with me. Like, yeah, that movie was shit. I agree with you.
Well, here's the thing. I never said that I loved it. I actually didn't care for it.
Oh, okay.
But what I was impressed with was the fact that it scared me and disturbed me to the point that it did, because I haven't felt like that, you know, watched the movie since first time watching The Exorcist or The Omen. And a lot of it had to do with the fact that I wasn't going into the movie expecting it to be scary. So, like, I wouldn't watch it again. I was impressed, you know, from the standpoint of the feeling it gave me while I watched it, because I wasn't anticipating that.
All right. Well, then option B is we have you back on here and we talk about Shocker.
Yeah. the old school 80s or early 90s movie?
Yes.
Nice.
Wes Craven, Kiss on the soundtrack. I mean, a lot of hair metal bands on the soundtrack.
Yeah, it was a good soundtrack.
Yeah, it was.
With that being said, Kyle, I know you got to get going, so let's go ahead. Let's rate this on 0 to 5 scale. you can give a justification or not. I think we just did that for the last 45 minutes. Kyle, as our guest, you have to start.
5 being the
Best.
best.
Yeah.
Honestly, I'd give it a 5. I don't think there's another movie like it. I don't think there's going to be another movie like it. And the fact that my favorite actor is in it, I rate that as actually my favorite horror movie of all time.
Corey, how about you?
Obviously, I am not at the level of enjoyment where Kyle is. I'm going to go, for me, and this is strictly for me, it's a 2.
Huh. Interesting. Didn't expect you to rate it that low. I give it a 5 also. I mean, it's just such an iconic film, and I remember seeing it young, so the nostalgia that's involved is definitely helps it. But yeah, Corey, since you're back, you have to read the outro.
Oh God, I don't even have it up. Hey, so let's see if I can do this from memory.
You just want me to do it?
You can start. You can call and leave us voicemail at 805-328-3966. Is that right?
Yep.
Wow. Good. I've done that enough times. And you can email us at pot@gncast.com. You can find us on Stitcher, Google Play, iTunes, all those places. We're Podcast of Terror. Or you can follow the Galactic Network as a whole. You can do the mega feed and get all the different shows that are on the network. You can rate us at bit.ly/potreview. We'd appreciate that. Or on the podcatcher of your choice. And you can follow the show's Facebook group under the Galactic Network on Facebook.
Yep. If you want to give us money without actually giving us money, go to amazon.podcastofterror.com. Shop like you normally would. We get a cut of what you spend. It helps keep this show free. Not like we're smart enough to ever charge people for it. Kyle, thank you very much for coming and hanging out and talking about The Shining. I was surprised that it took us 141 episodes to actually talk about this movie. But I'm glad you.
Well, thanks for having me, guys. Had a lot of fun.
Absolutely. Do you? It's up to you entirely if you want people to be able to find you where you would like them to do that.
I'm not really active on social media these days, but you know.
Well, this is your moment to pitch anything. You can point them towards a band's page that you like or something. You know, anything that you're kind of into right now.
No. These days, I'm just kind of focused on
being a dad,
on home life, and not really been kind of a hermit as of lately. But I'm sure I'll get back out sometime in the near future.
So, in other words, Kyle wants to point you to Justin Bieber's YouTube channel.
Jesus, he didn't say that.
Right.
Corey, where can people find you on the internets?
I'm not doing a lot of internet stuff right now. I mean, if you look for Corey Scott on things, I think I misspoke last week. My Instagram is Christian Scott, which is just pictures of my cat. My wife actually offered today to take over the Podcast of Terror Instagram since Matt and I do so much with it.
Yeah, she can do it.
Yeah. She was like, you should ask Matt. I'm like, you should ask Matt. He likes you more than he likes me. But yeah, like I said, go to the Galactic Network or Galactic Netcast Facebook page where we do have someone, Anessa, who has been leading the charge for the entire network on there and posting great and interesting stuff all the time. And there's a wonderful amount of people that are involved just in conversations and stuff on the page. And you can see the shows that Dave and Brad and everyone else out in the network are doing and be a part of that.
Sweet. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram and Untapped at Matt the Lifeguard. That's going to do it for that episode of the Podcast Terror. Next week, we're going to be talking about Lost Boys with Deborah Voorhees. If you're not familiar with who that is, watch Friday the 13th 5, and she's the one who's topless.
The one.
The most notable one who's topless in Friday the 13th 5.
She's also the inspiration for that Wolfie is Fine song, which...
It's a great fucking song.
Understandably so. Great song, great video. But she's really awesome. She's got a new project coming out with a bunch of people who are from the Friday the 13th films. F13, which you can support on social media through... it's not a Kickstarter. Is it an Indiegogo?
I think it's called Fanboy 13.
Fanboy 13. So look for that ahead of time so you can be ready to hear conversations about it. But she's pretty awesome.
Yep. Well, we'll definitely get into that with her next week. Kyle, thank you again. We'll let you get on with your night.
Thank you, guys.
Yep. We will talk to you guys next week.
Stay scared, everybody.
Good, man.
All right. Take care, Kyle.